So thanks everyone for coming to the webinar. We're super excited to show this solution to you, and we'll just kind of jump right in. Okay, so we're just going to welcome you to the webinar. So a little bit of the agenda for today. First, we're going to be introducing us at Rittman Analytics. Then we'll be deep diving into Welbee's journey, the problem that they identified, and the solution that we provided. This is kind of just going into the case study of this AI use case. So the technical deep dive will include things related to AI, chatbots, and the RAG integration that was part of this solution. And then we'll have a section dedicated to lessons learned and the technical insights. The whole duration will be about 45 minutes, and then there's going to be a Q&A at the end. So just introducing the speakers for today, I'm Joy. I'm the marketing assistant at Rittman Analytics. So I'll just be kind of doing the welcome, introductions, and the Q&A at the end. Then we have Mark, of course, who's our CEO. He's going to be introducing Rittman Analytics and kind of going into some of the technical insights that was a part of the solution. Next, we have Tim, who is the Chief Product and Technology Officer at Welbee. So he is the customer in this use case, and he's going to be giving us an overview of Welbee and really getting into the chatbot and the integration features that we implemented. So, and then we have Lydia. She is the analytics consultant that worked on this project. So she's going to be giving us the technical implementation side. And then we have Ben, who may or may not join us, who's our Google Cloud partner, and he's just going to explore some of the future possibilities with Google Cloud.
Okay, so over to me. Thanks, Joy. Just a quick one from me, just to introduce the company and myself. So Rittman Analytics, we're Oracle, sorry, we're a Google Cloud a specialized partner, a BI and data warehousing partner, based down in Brighton in the UK. And we basically work with Google and other technologies and customers who are typically sort of digital first, sort of scale up and startup customers, to get the most out of their sort of BI and data warehousing technology. So we partner with Google, DBT Labs, Cube, Snowflake, and so on there. And you can find out more about us on our website, rittmananalytics.com. About myself, so I've been in this business now for about 25 years. Used to work with Oracle technology years ago, then more to do with, say, big data and sort of cloud and startups over the last 10 years. And I work now as a CEO and a principal consultant at Rittman Analytics. Also, as well as running the company, I'm a blogger at our blog site there on our website and on Substack and Medium. Do a podcast, Drill to Detail, and I was the tech lead on this project with Welbee and Tim and Lydia.
Great. So just about me. So Welbee is a multi-awarding EdTech company. We've originally been focused on helping schools improve staff wellbeing through a stakeholder feedback survey for staff and lots of actions and a toolkit of resources. We support over 550 schools in the UK and US and have customers made up of districts and trusts in the UK as well as individual schools. So initially we were really well known for staff wellbeing, but now we have extended to include wider stakeholder feedback and data, so helping schools and trusts get the most out of their data, no matter where that lives and sits. We've worked and analysed over 2.4 million survey results so far, and we've had AI elements in our products, starting with a kind of advice chatbot since early 2022. So AI, whilst we talk about in this UK, wasn't new to us, but it was new to us when it comes to data. Just a bit about me. I'm Welbee's Chief Product and Technology Officer, because at a startup you get new things added to your title all the time. I'm really passionate about helping schools and trusts use data effectively, partly because I'm a former head teacher and before that a data and a data consultant for schools as well as obviously being a teacher before that. So I'm really kind of grounded in the education space. I know all the challenges that schools and colleges and trusts have about data and how we can help them use data to make data-driven decisions. Cool. So initially we're going to start by just looking at what the challenges we're trying to face before we approach Rittman to help us with this work. So we were launching a new product called Welbee Insights, which builds on our expertise of our stakeholder feedback for wellbeing and wanted to allow customers, based on their feedback, to ask questions to students, parents, or staff, and to go beyond our templated surveys and be able to create any survey they want about any topic to any audience. We wanted it to enable them to be able to survey students, parents, and staff separately, as most of our competitors do, but also in one single survey. So we can have a single survey that has students, parents, and staff in it, so you can easily compare views across stakeholders. We then knew we wanted this product called Edu Intelligence, which kind of combines all this feedback and the wider education data into a multi-tenanted silo model warehouse, so all our customers' data is completely separate together. But we wanted to do that in a way that actually allow people to still get the actions and next steps that we're known for our wellbeing survey for any questions and for any survey data and things that they had. And we knew that it was really important to look at that data across, rather than just stakeholder feedback by itself, across that wider data schools and trusts own, because the feedback of their students, their parents, and staff doesn't exist in isolation, can be very much influenced by their other characteristics, by attendance, by achievement, by a whole range of different characteristics for them. And it's important to enable schools and trusts to be able to see that data in the round in one place.
So Tim, before you go on, just why is it so important to do these surveys, and why is there a whole business around this, and why would schools be doing this exercise really?
Yeah, so I think schools are really keen, and trusts are really keen to make sure that they're making decisions that kind of reflect the needs and wants and desires of the people who serve them and the stakeholders. Schools exist as a community, and it's really important for schools when they make decisions on what they're going to do, whether it's curriculum developments or approaches to say improve attendance, for example, that they have that feedback from their stakeholders, both their staff, but also students and parents are really key, because none of these exist in isolation. And we know that particularly large multi-category trusts and lots of schools as well really value taking feedback. And most schools and trusts do take feedback in some way. But our biggest competitor at Welbee is actually Google Forms and Microsoft Forms, to kind of do-it-yourself simple surveys. But if you're a parent, I'm sure you get so many different forms to fill in for children. And it is that kind of taking that wider data-driven decision-making kind of beyond the data we already hold in schools and colleges to help really inform what they're doing with the feedback, and to know how they're doing it well. Because I know from being a head teacher, it's so easy to sit in your office and walk around the school and be there and think you're doing a good job, until actually you look at the data, but you look at also what people feel and views. You might feel that wellbeing is really positive in your school, but actually certain members of staff may have a different view on that.
Okay. And you said here as well, you've got surveying staff, students, and parents, right? So why is this more complicated to do and to understand than, say, a Google form?
Yeah, so a Google form is great because obviously you can get the answers really quickly, but you get them in kind of one aggregate amount, and the responses for people in education are very much determined, well, not determined, it can be impacted by their characteristics. For example, if a child has been at school all the time, 100% of the time, or 92% or 95% of the time, have good attendance, compared to those who are persistently absent and haven't been at school for at least 10% of the time, so they're at least 90% absent. Those kind of different characteristics can really give an insight into actually, okay, so this pupil group feels this, but actually, did you know that those who have been at school all the time feel this, versus those who are persistently absent feel this, and the same with their parents and staff, which can help kind of underpick that. And I think because we have that education data inherently is fairly complex. You have a whole range of different characteristics and elements that we have to consider, whether it's special education needs, pupil premium preschool meals, attendance achievement. You think of this attendance achievement data. There's so many different methods that people assess people by, whether it's progress 8 at secondary schools to SATs and good level development at kind of early years, and a whole range in between. And actually, the data becomes quite complex in itself.
Okay.
So this is what kind of we had before we kind of approached Rittman Analytics. Or what we're going to have is kind of our general kind of charts and graphs, which is all well and good. But I know, again, in education, people are data rich but knowledge poor. Yeah, so we had quite a few challenges we wanted to kind of address. Cool. So the problem we were trying to solve is we really wanted to make sure we go beyond the dashboards, provide this clear analysis of data, because I say we can look at data, and I know for all the best will in the world, as much as a head teacher or a trust leader might want to really analyse that data they've got, you have 16,001 other things come into your inbox or appear that day that have to take priority and importance. So actually the amount of time we have to actually analyse data and actually take the really valuable exercise we're doing, stakeholder feedback or our wider education data, is very minimal. We also wanted to be able to provide the recommendations that we offered for Welbee, which is what we won all our awards for, is actually not just doing a survey, but helping people take action based on that survey, into this challenge where we had free-form multi-audience surveys. But it could be a survey to students about the last school trip, but it could be a survey to staff about bullying and harassment in school, or it could be a survey to parents and students about e-safety, and all these different whole varieties, open-ended topics. And we had having a lot of control over what people asked, to no control over what people asked, but still wanted a way to give recommendations and that kind of reporting. We also know, as I kind of alluded to before, that we have lots of people who are really passionate in education. Obviously, that's right. Educators are educators. Right? I was in education. And we get into leadership positions, but we're not data specialists, we're not HR specialists, we're not specialists in these things that you might have when you're in a big corporate organization. And actually, we need to help support people who maybe lack that specialized data knowledge that we might have on this call to actually make those kind of inferences and see those patterns in data and try to analyze it in a way that didn't require learning a new BI tool, learning any of these things that actually was just easy for them to use and as intuitive as it is to speaking to somebody and asking those questions. And as we alluded to in our conversation earlier, Mark, it's about also coping that inherent complexity of an education data about different characteristics applied to multiple people. Even when you look at parents, actually, you look at, okay, how do we analyze parents' data? Well, parent only means something to the school based on their child. So as a parent, yeah, you're a person, but actually the school wants to know about parents of children in year 6, not parents whose name's Mark, for example. So there's lots of complexity that comes to the data and how it kind of interacts with each other.
So what you're saying basically is that the data is complex, and getting meaning from that data requires sort of real thinking and sort of like drilling into it, and kind of it needs a bit of analysis, and then actually making that analysis and insight available to people who aren't necessarily kind of trained in how to use a BI tool. That was the other challenge really as well. So making sense of it and democratizing access to it.
Definitely, yeah. It is that complete combination of actually making sure everybody can access the data that they collect, can analyze it, and can actually see those kind of hidden bits as well. And when we go into some solution, we'll see that solution was built, the combination of BI tool and the chatbot helps with actually see those there's almost hidden trends in data and characteristics and linkages that you would get to, but only get to by drilling over the data in a traditional kind of tool.
Okay. So the solution. So Tim came to us with some good ideas at the time. And then myself and Lydia gave it some thought as to sort of like what kind of, how can we help Tim really to use some of the latest kind of technology, including AI technology, to kind of make this data accessible and also understandable. So we spoke to Tim at the time about a package we had, which we call our conversational analytics quick start, because Tim identified that a chatbot with a kind of agentic background to it, so that it could, so this chatbot could do some thinking for you, analyze the data, and respond with information to kind of stakeholders in a way that those stakeholders can sort of understand and kind of converse with and so on. That was the solution that we wanted to sort of put together. So we could combine this kind of chatbot and agent technology and AI. This was going to be a solution for it. Now Welbee is a startup, so Welbee hasn't got the funds to sort of do a big thing that went over multiple years. We needed to put something together as quickly that we could iterate on and would kind of show value and would start to sort of like deliver value for Welbee and allow them to sort of go up to the next stage of the product where they could sort of build it out further and so on. So we put together this package where, and Lydia will talk in a bit more detail about how we did this, but we had workshops, we had a solution design phase, we prototyped, we deployed, and then integrated what we're doing. But this is all around building. It's all around the idea of building a chatbot that has the ability to understand your data, allow you to converse with it, and to deal with the complexity really of the data that Tim's been talking about. Okay, so this was an engagement that ran over weeks rather than months, and Lydia in a second will talk about kind of how that actually worked. So Tim, is this you first of all? Is this Lydia? I think it's Tim, isn't it?
Over to Lydia, I think.
Lydia,
Yeah.
right, Lydia, go ahead then.
I got this. Yeah, thanks for that, Mark. So yeah, Mark just gave us a brief overview of how we carried out the project, and during this section of the presentation, we're just going to drill into that in a bit more further detail. So looking at the implementation side, but before we get into that, we need to talk about the design and how we come up with it. So what we did at Rittman Analytics, we facilitated a few workshops to gather the requirements needed to build out this AI-driven solution. And the main requirement is a user needs to be able to ask questions about their survey and get a response. So that was like the high level goal of this. Then from that, we followed up with more workshops to go through and come up with a design, looking at how we can leverage Google Cloud and in particularly like Vertex AI. So now I'm going to break down like the different steps that we came up with for this solution. So the first step is we needed to make sure that we had access to those survey results, looking at a group or school level. Once we had access to the data, what do we do with it now? So we had a look at creating a stage for pre-analysis. Reasons for this is for like consistent results, better performance for the chatbot. So therefore the pre-analysis is already done. And we wanted to identify how we should do that pre-analysis first. And we've already identified we needed to do it at a school level and a group level. And then we even took a look further at looking at like different subgroups within those schools, for example. And then from that pre-analysis, we're able to generate like suggested actions using a RAG. Now we have gone through and done like the pre-analysis step, the data is all ready. We need to come up with a way of how this chatbot is going to work. So firstly, the design was using like different AI agents to understand the user's questions. And then once we know what the user is asking, how are we going to answer it? Is it a simple question where we can go use that pre-analysis that we've already created? Or is it more of a complex question where we need to create a custom or bespoke SQL query to go get the data directly from the database itself? So that's just a quick overall of the design. Let's take a look at the implementation itself. So first, focusing on that pre-analysis step, so anything before we even interact with that chatbot, we went through and followed an approach of prototyping our theories before implementing the entire solution. So the way that we did this is we use notebooks using like Vertex AI, coming up with different functions to be able to go through all these different analysis. So firstly, we needed the data in a state the way that like an LLM was able to understand it. So we went through converting a JSON into a new line delimiter JSON, just so we can ensure that we couldn't get errors and we wanted consistent responses from the LLM. From that, the data is now structured in a clear, easy way for the LLM to access. We can now get on with the analysis. So we did this in a few stages. Firstly, looking at the questions. So what this means, it would look at a survey, give you a general summary of what's in that survey, as in what are the questions about. Then it would break it down by questions, given again another general analysis. So, what is the questions? What type of results did we get? And can we break it down into like different subgroups? Identifying like different responses for this. Now we have the question analysis completed. This is like stored in a JSON. We again wanted to do the next step, which is looking at school level analysis. And what this does, it takes the results from the previous function, so the question analysis, and converts it in a more readable way for the user. So therefore, going through identifying the questions and the subgroups that we're looking at and providing a high level analysis. So it broke it down into steps again, general analysis of the survey, identifying key differences between your subgroups, and then just areas of interest. So this will be in a textual way, meaning it's very easy to read instead of like JSON, which is more technical. And again, the next step was at a group level because some schools are within groups. So therefore, it's exactly the same as school level, but instead of just comparing subgroups, in this one, we're going ahead and comparing schools as well and getting those areas of interest.
So before you go on to the next slide, Lydia, I'm just for
Yeah.
anybody who's not follows it, why, if we're building a chatbot and a SQL Access chatbot, why do you go and pre-analyze the data in the first place? Why don't you just get the chatbot to analyze it on the fly?
Because you think on the fly would be quick, but it wouldn't. As in, we need to aggregate that data in a way where we can output it in a readable response. So therefore, if you're doing aggregations on top of a data, that is going to be slow. Also, to ensure consistency against the output of the chatbot, if we ran a query every time someone answered the question, the output could be slightly different each time. That could be confusing to the user and very misleading there.
Okay, and later on we'll see actually when you do that direct SQL lookup as well in certain cases. So
Yeah.
let's move on to the next one. Okay.
Yeah, so I walked you through like the prototype design, which we carried out in notebooks. Then we wanted to create like a scalable solution. So let me walk you through how we did this. So the first step, in like the previous slide, you saw that we had to create a JSON and then have it into a new line delimiter JSON file. This has now been mitigated and it is handled in a different way. So the way this works is once a survey closes, PubSub notification will alert like a Google Cloud Composer script, and this will then run those data preparation steps to be able to get that survey data in a JSON format that the LLM is able to understand.
Once that has been completed, that JSON file is then saved into BigQuery, so therefore the application will be able to go back in and access that data. Then from the different functions or the different notebooks that we were looking on the previous slides, these were then implemented into a Google Cloud Run function. Again, this is using Python and looking at the Gemini 1.5 model. And then, Mark, as we just mentioned, the reason we do this is to make sure we're ensuring consistency around the whole application there. So now I'm going to hand over to him, and he's going to take you through the Text-to-SQL chatbot.
Yeah, great. As I said, before we get into, I know we're going into lots of technical detail. If you've got any questions about it, do feel free to use the Q&A function in Zoom. I know we've got a couple of questions sitting there already, and can address those as we go through or at the end. So as Lydia mentioned, we wanted these kind of two styles. We wanted the pre-analysis, so when a survey closes, we wanted to be able to give people a detailed report that outlined kind of key summary of the survey, key difference between subgroups and pupil groups or parent groups and staff groups, and between audiences, and some key kind of bits of data and information that might be kind of hidden in the data, so kind of like the key trends it's noticed, and then some suggested next steps and actions. And that's really important because if a survey closes and it needs to be there pretty much straight away, and it is. But then we knew we'd have that would be a good start, but users are always going to have questions about their data that they want to answer that we couldn't necessarily predict as part of kind of the pre-analysis that we kind of provide them. And that's why our text-to-SQL kind of chatbot solution came in. But we needed to be really careful with text-to-SQL in the education kind of data, because we didn't want to ever end up with raw data about an individual child going to an LLM, because obviously we had to really carefully, we've got really secure and ring-fenced LLM models and our own kind of deployments on the Google Cloud. We still wanted to make sure there's no risk of an LLM getting access to the raw data. And also needed to be able to deal with that inherent complexity of a open-ended survey, education data together. So we kind of created a text-to-SQL chatbot solution with Lydia through kind of prototyping lots of different things and lots of different notebooks lying around to work out the best approach and breaking this down. And it kind of ended up being kind of this approach where a user would ask a question about their survey, they see their pre-analysis, ask a question. We then go through a series of agents using LangChain and later on LangGraph at the end of kind of the flow. The first LangChain agent would go and check to see how complex or simple the question is, and know whether we can answer it from the pre-analysis, whether we need to go and do some of our own text-to-SQL, if it's actually too complex to answer at the moment and giving a nice warning message, or indeed if it's just advice and doesn't actually rely to the data. And that then routes it through the kind of next series of agents to go forward. We then needed to have the kind of a data extraction agent to work together to identify the relevant questions the users ask. So they ask a question, what questions in their survey is going to help answer the question the user has. What schools, what subgroups does it relate to? What user attributes do we want to look for? And all of those are done by separate agents because they can have very specialized prompting and different models being used to achieve the kind of the best outcome for each of those very specialized tasks. They then get put together by a text-to-SQL chatbot, which effectively takes those different outputs and groups them into a SQL query, which then obviously only returns aggregate data. And we have lots of safeguards in the code to make sure the SQL isn't going to go and add, delete, or modify the data in any way, and it will retrieve. And that gives the output, which is passed through a series we'll go through in a second, of steps to kind of use our Retrieval-Augmented Generation and other kind of LangGraph agents we've got sitting in the system to kind of take that data and turn it into a concise kind of textual response, but also with those suggestions and next steps in there. This also meant that we could then deal with the silo model we've got, so we can make sure we address in the code to the right data set in BigQuery, so that we're not going to ever run the risk of AI misinterpreting the user's data or forgetting to put a kind of row-level security school ID in there because it is in that silo model. Well, if we have those as second backstops, we know that actually they're never going to have access to anybody else's data through the AI, no matter what kind of things they try or injections they try to do to the chatbot code, because they've got that silo model sitting there. And it kind of flies through this. At the end, so once it's got the data, or if it's just a straight advice question, it goes into our LangGraph, which has got a few more nodes than on this diagram. But it basically goes and looks to see, great, I've got this data, what does it mean? And it will go and answer and interpret that in context of that school or that trust, and it has some of that contextual information there. And then it will go and call different nodes of the graph if it needs to use our Retrieval-Augmented Generation over some expert guidance advice that we collated and have permission to use, or whether it will go and do a very limited web search to high quality resources like the DFE website, Education Endowment Foundation, lots of different places that we use that are open access, completely free to use and we can legally use as part of search to help answer that question. Once it's got enough knowledge and data and it's confident its answer is going to help the user, it will output to the user. If not, it will go back around the cycle again to query the data again and to kind of interpret that from there. As I say, so and that's done through lang graph implementation. So we have a mixture of lang chains, and then effectively one of the steps of the chain is a nodal graph. There.
So Tim, what does it look like now then? So what did the actual end result look like, and how are you marketing the product now, really? So let's move on to that.
Yeah. So what it looks like now is that we can have people ask surveys about anything, just staff, students, or parents, and they'll get a really detailed analysis within minutes of survey closing of the survey, and you can ask questions in natural language. And we know that kind of customers really like that. We're going to send that feedback later. And it means that we're helping those schools and trusts kind of break down those data silos and give them that kind of real intelligence, as we say, to help them drive the change and improve things they want. We've got that in analytics sitting there, but also the data into action, and we're really big about making sure, see in our logo that says turning data into action, because actually that's what we're about. We're not about collecting data. We can do that. There's lots of solutions out there that collect data. Actually about helping schools and trusts turn that data into action, and we can do that through the AI we developed in the POC and then the developments we're making since that point as well. So just an example, obviously it's difficult to show a chatbot live, but this is a real school question. So how is behaviour received across my trust? One of my schools said change the school names, obviously for obvious reasons, but so the AI comes back and it says, obviously it's a shorter version. Okay, so in most schools across the trust, behaviour is perceived really well by parents, students and staff. But did you know that in one of your schools, Martingale Primary, it's not? So that gets the trust about to think, okay, what's going different in that school to the others, and what can the other schools help that school with, because they're working together. But then it also goes and picks out, even though it wasn't asked this as part of it, but looking at the data, it's realised that students who've got special educational needs reported that there are higher instances of unkind behaviour, and that's being witnessed far more frequently, as did parents of those who are persistently absent. So it gives that kind of trust, that kind of starting point to think, okay, wonder if that unkind behaviour, or the reason they're not at school is because of unkind behaviour, or if we've got some work we need to do about special educational needs and differences to help the unkind behaviour experience from SEND. So even though they didn't ask, or what about SEND students, because we've got access to that wider data, it can identify that actually, yeah, this is the answer to the question you want, but did you know that if you look at these particular groups of people, you're getting this. And that's what our customers really like, is that kind of ability to go beyond the data they ask. If you don't know there's an issue with special education needs children and behaviour, or bullying, being studied at bullying, for example, unkind behaviour, you're not going to know to type that question to ask it, or to go and look that on a chart. So this kind of gives those jumping out points. And that might be, of course, that you realise that, okay, the witnesses of unkind behaviour is nothing to do with why those children are persistently absent, and that's fine. But it's given that kind of starting point for school and for leaders to know what to kind of look at. And then people can go on and ask questions about that and kind of what can we do about it. So on the next slide, we've got, okay, so we noticed that we've got unkind behaviour for SEND. What could I do to do that? And this is where they're taking the data into action really comes in, is then the chatbot would kind of say, great, we know this is what we said in the data. Have you tried doing these? So you can see from the suggestion it's giving here, it's giving really appropriate and contextually relevant to the school situation suggestions, like the Diana Award, for example, which is a national anti-bullying programme, things about this DFE's guidance for restorative approaches, and a whole range of different things. And it's gone into that kind of land graph element of the code to kind of get these resources together for the user, but tying it back to their data. Right, so obviously we need to make sure this has some benefit to us and kind of insights we've got from there. First thing to say is our customers do thankfully really love what we've developed, and why we continue to develop it at pace. Our first customer closed a survey with us when the new system was in place, was from Two Counties Trust, and she literally emailed to us with, this is amazing. I was asked a question about our data and it was very impressive. And you looked at the kind of the transcripts and kind of monitoring of the questions she was asking. She was asking some really detailed questions about data, and the chatbot was able to kind of respond to that. Our customers find it significantly reduced their post-survey workload and takes the time from turning their survey into action into kind of hours or minutes rather than days. Means they can share it easily with other schools and elements of their trust as well. From a business point of view, though, we said we really realise it's really important to monitor what the AI is doing. Particularly, we've got 12 different agents working in our solution at the moment, and adding more as we go through. And it's really important to be able to monitor what they're getting up to, if you want a better word, using Langsmith or another tool or other lots of those out there, which means we can then look to say, okay, if we've got a suboptimal response to a question, we can look to say, okay, great, what is it? Where in the chain of agents has that broken down, and what can we do to kind of improve that prompts? And from an architecture point of view and code kind of policy point of view, we also found it really important to make sure our prompts were easily accessible within our code in one place. So we have a prompts utility file that has all our prompts in it. So if we want to go and tweak a prompt, we're just changing one file, and we know it will apply wherever that function is called. And it was also key to select the best models for performance and cost. And we did lots of kind of Q&A and experimentation between OpenAI, Claude, and product models, Gemini. And we found really that Gemini between 1.5 Pro, 1.5 Flash, and now we've got a bit of 2.0 Flash in part of the now to perform better. We had the perfect balance of kind of cost and performance, and that actually OpenAI models were slower and actually were nowhere near as accurate in terms of with probably the same kind of prompts that we were offering. So it's really important to kind of select those.
Okay, actually, just to back up Tim's point there as well. We went through quite a few different LLMs and I suppose frameworks for doing this really. And I think the thing that was also important here is that we had to be able to make sure everyone was confident that the data that was being the data that was being shared with the LLMs and these frameworks was not going to be confidential data and was not going to be used for any kind of sort of training of models and so on. So really, again, by using Gemini models from Google Clouds, there was that confidence right from the start that we knew this data would stay confidential, that there wouldn't be any kind of breach of trust, with stakeholders and so on of this. And also part of the design that Lydia worked on was the idea here is, and Tim as well, was we never sent anything that was specific to a pupil to the LLMs. Okay, so it's always aggregated data, and it was always kind of it made sure that it couldn't be linked to any one person really, because that's obviously very important. And also, the element of this that was generating SQL on the fly, it was important that the LLM that we used would generate accurate queries, that you wouldn't end up getting wrong responses back. Part of how we dealt with that was by pre-creating a lot of this analysis. Part of it was by enriching it with data from a very select group of sort of grounding sources and so on, but also the actual accuracy of the LLM for doing this as well. So it's really important that you don't assume things will work and you use a sort of privacy first kind of LLM for doing this. Is why we used Google Cloud for this exercise. Tim, just very briefly, just tell us what's coming along with the products in the future.
Yeah, so obviously we're not stopping here. Obviously from the POC, which is obviously now in production as well. We're working with some of these with Rittman as well to help us kind of improve the next steps of what we're doing and to help kind of enhance customer requests and help deliver that promise of taking the data into action. One of the key things we want to be able to do is to ask questions that combines the groups. So look at boys who are eligible for Pupil Premium and are in Year 8, rather than just Year 8 or Pupil Premium or boys together, which just requires an extra layer of complexity, and that is about to be released. We also want customer-specific Retrieval-Augmented Generation, which thanks to Document AI and BigQuery's vector search, we can do in Google Cloud quite easily, whilst respecting our silo model of data. So that we'll have customers at load say their development plans and improvement plans and policies, which the AI agents will use to help suggest next steps, but also help them reflect on how their survey data and rider data is actually showing how their improvements working. We want to be able to interrogate that rider education data using AI. So at the moment you can ask questions about your education data in context of a survey, so attendance, behaviour, achievement. We want that to be able to ask questions about attendance, behaviour, and achievement without having completed a survey in the first place. And then we're also looking at things like benchmarking to make sure schools can see how to compare, but there's a definitely role for AI assistance in that. Helping schools actually create those documents. The schools create so many different types of action plans and have to keep things up to date, and actually helping them create those from the data we hold. And then all this will lead to what we're calling education data general intelligence, or EDGI, or whatever we're going to call it in the future, where actually the user won't have to ask the question. It will come with them and say, okay, did you realise attendance this week has dropped to 90% for this group of children? Go have a look at this kind of thing. So kind of that generalised thing there.
Okay. So basically, so if you're interested in how we did this, there's some Q&A at the end, but just a general kind of follow-up, I suppose. So if this is something that interests you, then obviously we'd love to help. That's Rittman Analytics. We've got a team here that work with this technology now all the time. So with AI and agents and all this kind of like centralization of data and kind of, I suppose, democratizing data access. Google as well provide, for your startup, they provide funding for this kind of work. So I think Tim, actually, that's how Tim was introduced to us at the start. And certainly Google will support these kind of things. And there are various other departments within sort of Google that can do this. If you're interested in more worked examples of these, so we, as you see at the moment, there's actually a service we do where we can actually kind of showcase this stuff to you over a sort of like a workshop. But if you go to our website, there are examples there, including this blog here, for example, which was actually, I wrote this in response to some of the work that Tim was looking to do to try and actually prototype some of the ideas that we then went on to use in this engagement. So if you're interested, there's tons of stuff on our website about examples we've created using this technology. We go into a lot of detail. So if you're interested in some of the actual technical details under this, then the blogs cover that. And also, if you're interested, we're offering a special offer where if you want to have a free 3-hour workshop with us, where we will basically sit down with you virtually, do some discovery, understand what you're trying to achieve, and then we can showcase some examples of this technology we've developed ourselves. As part of a kind of a 3-hour workshop. So that's available now. If you want to scan the QR code, that will take you through to the offer page. And we'd love to hear from you and love to sort of help in future with this kind of project. So Joy, do you have any questions at all from the audience?
Yeah, we've got two. So
Right.
The first question we've got in the Q&A box is, what were the key challenges in integrating generative AI with staff wellbeing analytics?
Yeah,
Tim?
so do you want me to go with that one?
Yeah, go on then. Yeah.
I think one of our challenges was going beyond the staff wellbeing piece, but also with staff wellbeing, is making sure that the AI answers in a responsible way, which is why perception model is really important, and also the retrieval-augmented generation, the grounding is really key as well in there. So that if we ask a question about wellbeing in particular, any response we're going to give is going to be backed in kind of evidence. And just do with my questions about particularly wellbeing, and is not going to provide any unsafe or potentially unsafe responses to people. That's why the monitoring of our Q&A we do internally of responses is really key as well, to make sure that we're picking up places where the AI could have behaved slightly more optimally, maybe, and increasing that of our safeguards in place within the chain.
Lydia, what about yourself? When you came to do the pre-analysis, what was challenging about that?
From a technical perspective, it was challenging to initially get the LLM to actually output something that was useful, because it would output information, but the format would be either unreadable, or if it was the SQL chatbot, the SQL had syntax errors in it. So a way that we handle it is making sure, as well as asking the LLM to do something for us, we're also saying, this is the format we want it. Please, could you provide the output using these words? Making sure that we had a structured output every single time. So therefore, we were able to have a handle on any of those errors.
And I think as part of that, we moved as we were finishing this POC, Google made into public access their control generation kind of elements of their Vertex models. We have moved one element to it suitable for that, where it's far more tightly controlled how it will respond. So for enforcing a specific JSON format in one of our cases, when our agents need to output in a very specific format, you can do that with far more accuracy now for using control generation, which is a particular Vertex feature for Gemini models, which kind of helps with that. It's not suitable for everything. We've got many of our prompts that don't use control generation because it doesn't fit the boundaries of what it can do. But yeah, where the control generation can be used, I definitely recommend using that as well, because this gives you far more tightness about what the LLM is going to respond with.
How did LangChain help with that? How did LangChain and LangGraph help with that?
Yeah, I think the LangChain is really key, because we knew straight away when we're doing kind of prototyping. I remember our first meeting with Lydia, and it's like, actually, okay, well, one prompt isn't going to do this kind of thing. We're not going to be able to have the world's best engineered prompt and access to the data source in the right way. We knew we're not going to get this through a single prompt, or even a number, 1 or 2 prompts. We end up with different agents sitting together to this end-to-end kind of solution, because each one needed to be specific. Each one also needed to use the best model for that prompt. So but at the time, it was a largely choice from 1.5 Flash and 1.5 Pro, and making sure we managed the FinOps versus the performance and accuracy. And we knew we needed to do that. And Langsmith comes into play with that, because particularly as a startup, you get a very generous, completely free Langsmith account, or very discounted. And allows you actually really track the kind of responses in an anonymous way. If we have it turned on, we can't actually see the end user, but we can see actually how it has responded to certain things and what role the different prompts have had in that. Because obviously the danger when you have different AI agents working together without any human interaction is that if one makes a mistake, it kind of gets passed through to the others. So it's important to make sure we minimize that, but also that we had non-AI elements in the code that sanitize responses to make sure that they were in the format the next agent needed.
Okay, Joy, any more questions?
Yeah, so next question is, was Looker used for real-time monitoring, or was it more focused on historical trend analysis?
So it's always to do with the actual survey that the survey or surveys the user has closed. So it's semi-historical in terms of the data has already sits there and it's just a BigQuery, but it takes that against the real-time characteristics of the students. So if a student characteristic changes, then the real-time data will take that into account. Does that make sense? So there is kind of combination of both historic and real-time. And in the future, when we talk about some of the things we mentioned in the previous time, what we want to do next, what we're working on next, that will be far more real-time education data without our survey being involved in it.
Okay, that was Julian, actually. Julian's asked, so I know J4 Julian. Also interested in the latency between the user asking the question and how long the RAG takes to present the answer. So yeah, I suppose RAG is a selective thing on here, isn't it? So just maybe outline when RAG comes into it.
So it depends on the type of question the user is asking. If it's a direct data question that then involves the RAG, we're looking at latency of between 20 to 30 seconds, which our user said is more than acceptable. Actually, when we're doing some user research, the quicker it responded, the less trust the user had in the response of the AI, because if it came out straight away, they think, well, I haven't really thought about it. That makes sense. So it's an interesting thing that actually latency isn't necessarily a bad thing when it comes to this kind of data, because it knows that actually considering it. Obviously, you're working to improve latency all the time as new AI models come out and different ways of accessing them come out. It obviously can help us with that as well. So latency, even over the past few months, has improved through just model uses and things. Yeah.
Okay.
I think Julie also had another question that's in the answers section, so I responded by text, but then we can probably pick that out in here as well.
Right. Just maybe recap on that just for a minute or so. Yeah. What was Julian's question there?
Yeah, so it's about the specific agent roles and how, I guess we talk about why we chose different agents, but the agent kind of breaks down that user question, and we won't go into the exact breakdown because obviously that would enable to replicate exactly what we've done ready. But it breaks down it looks at the user's question and breaks it down to the key elements, which then helps our text-to-SQL element, which is an agent sits at the end, in the middle actually, be able to form the right query to answer the user's question. So it kind of really breaks that down. And I think, again, from experimenting, from having a single prompt that tries to break everything down, so we started an issue with Lydia to actually saying, oh, actually, we need 4 different prompts to do 4 different elements of it. Which can all work async, so they all work kind of at the same time, so it doesn't actually add hardly any latency to it, but actually they can work and unpick that user's query. Also, we had... and we talked about safeguarding in there, I think, Julie, as well. So in LangChain, yes, we have some particular prompts that make sure that any questions and answers aren't going to pose any form of safeguarding concern or alert. In the whole data system and product we've got, we have safeguarding at its heart. So there's ways to reveal, even as an anonymous survey, who a child is or who a parent is to set a certain comment if that causes concern to the school as well. So from a kind of education safeguarding point of view, we also have safeguarding from a technical safeguarding point of view in there to actually check queries and check the SQL before it's operated on there.
Brilliant. Joy, over to you. You're on mute, Joy.
Thanks. That's all the questions we have in the Q&A box. Is there anything you guys would like to add to your bit before I kind of close this off?
No, I'm good. I mean, I could just move on to the next bit here, really. I think this is it here. But yeah, so if you want to get hold of us, you can contact myself through the company. Not sure where this contact slide has gone. Here it is. There we go. So there's our contact details there. So Tim, you're a bit of an enthusiast for this, as we all are. So I'm sure Tim, if somebody reached out to you, you'd be happy to sort of like to continue the conversation.
Of course.
Myself as well. I'm always here. And we will post the video on YouTube after this, so you'll be able to see it from there. Yeah, thank you very much, basically, for coming along, and Google as well. They've been here in spirit, so I'm sure they'll be happy to help at some point as well. Yeah, thank you very much for everything today. Thank you so much, Tim and Lydia, for your contribution today, really, and Joy for bringing it all together. So thank you very much.